With the launch of UPN in January 1995, the network kicked off its first season with a success in Star Trek Voyager and two other sitcoms that didn't really find that same success. Platypus Man and Pigsty both premiered on January 23rd, and they both had their final episodes air on May 15th. I have a big fascination with obscure and random media, especially game shows, reality shows, and sitcoms, so I wanted to check out Pigsty and see what it was like. Should it have gone on for longer, or was UPN right in canceling it? Let's take a look. Pigsty, like Platypus Man, ran for only 13 episodes, which nowadays is a lot, but for a sitcom that's like half a season. The basic premise for the show is that there's 5 guys living together in an apartment in New York City, and there's also a woman superintendent in the building that's their friend. And that's pretty much it. They kept this premise very basic. So there were 6 main characters on this show, all with very different personalities to really check off everything kind of cliche in a sitcom. There's Randy, who was like the quote-unquote normal guy of the cast. He's a struggling writer who serves as a bartender and is seen as kind of a voice of reason at times. You should know my reputation for dismantling the quote-unquote normal guys on this channel. He's got like a huge crush on the superintendent Tess and is always hitting on her to minimal effect. Gotta love this style of humor where the guy is just extremely annoying and way too upfront about his crush as he gets turned down at every pass. He kind of reminds me of Jerry from Seinfeld in a way, just because of their snarky sense of humor, the hairdo almost, and the supposed normality they possess compared to the others in their shows. There's PJ, who's very much the introverted weirdo of the cast. He has a super rich family and lives off of that wealth while basically doing nothing besides just sitting around in the apartment playing songs on his guitar. He hates talking to people and is pretty socially awkward, but he loves writing music. He also has a more transactional relationship with his dad than a loving one, and his dad is often the root of his stress. There's Johnny, who fits the niche of the misogynist, full of himself type of guy. He always talks about how good he looks, he always talks about what he believes women want, and he always talks about his issues with women. He has this sort of on-again, off-again thing with his girl Christine, but he lets his, let's say, certain views get in the way of that. He loves flirting with women and loves being overconfident about himself. Oh, and he's a lawyer, in case you didn't hate him enough. There's Cal, who is the mischievous and selfish guy in the group. He's a businessman who loves screwing over his employees and is obsessed with lying, stealing, and cheating. Shout out the GOAT. He has basically no chill with what he says and is not afraid to do whatever it takes to advance his career or to just plain make fun of others. He is very funny though. He's just unhinged and loves being the most selfish and heartless person alive. I don't know if it's because I see maybe a small resemblance, but he kind of reminds me of MJF, except that MJF wasn't rich or successful. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. There's Joe, or as the others call him, Iowa, who, you guessed it, is from Iowa. He moves to New York City for an internship at a New York hospital and is the new guy among the friend group in the apartment. He's like the more respectful and thoughtful one of the cast because he's not from New York, so he's a lot less pessimistic about things and is always trying to help people in any scenario. It's just funny to me that he's labeled as from Iowa of all places because everything about him makes me think that the writers thought Iowa is in the South. He's got a little bit of a southern twinge in his accent, and he's very much got a southern hospitality vibe to him. I don't know if an Iowa accent exists, or really anything about what goes on in Iowa, but he screams the South to me more than Iowa.
Hi, I'm Joe. I just got it. Great.
And there's Tess, who is the superintendent of the building. She's always cleaning and fixing things in the apartments, but she's usually called to the guy's apartment because Randy, who's got a big crush on her, will intentionally break things so she can come up and fix them. She always denies his passes though, so good on her. She's kind of like one of the guys here, as she'll regularly hang out with them in their apartment or outside of it when she's not working. She's also an aspiring actress who's always trying to get into different roles, and sometimes it works out for her and other times it doesn't. But since she's one of the guys, they're always there for her as a friend whenever necessary. And that was the main cast. They covered a lot of different niches for sitcoms, but overall, I'd say it was a decent cast of characters. I feel like some like Cal and Joe were good characters, while others like Johnny were just kinda unnecessary. Like throughout the 13 episodes, Johnny's important in maybe like 2 of them. Meanwhile, Cal is always a highlight in every episode. PJ and Tess were also good sources of humor, and Joe had a good balance of funny, but seriousness and lightheartedness. But something that sticks out to me though is the kind of randomness of these guys being brought together. There's no real backstory as to how these guys met, how they got into this apartment together, or really anything like that. Episode 1 obviously sees Joe move into the apartment as the new guy, while Johnny moved out, but after impulsively ending with Christine, he moved back in. And the only other little bit of information regarding a backstory is between Randy and PJ, who mentioned a few times that they went to college together. Beyond that, there's no real connection as to how they ended up rooming with Cal or Johnny initially. Like with any sitcom, there's a lot of different and wacky situations that take place in each episode. Some episodes fell flat for me, while others were genuine surprises in their good quality and humor. Episode 3 was probably my favorite episode out of all of them. In this episode, titled Iowa vs. New York, Joe's more optimistic attitude is put to the test as everyone else is used to the dreariness of New York. Joe attempts to get a real cable guy to come by to give them cable in the apartment so they no longer have to steal it from other tenants, but he accidentally lets a thief steal their TV before the real cable guy comes along. Joe then ends up getting ripped off at a local shop for a new TV, which ends up just being the exact same TV that was stolen from them.
Got some terrible news. Mrs. Thorne in 6D died.
Oh no, what a tragedy.
I know, I'm real upset.
Heaven's a sweeter place tonight.
You guys are real close to her, huh?
Never laid eyes on her.
We were tapping into her cable.
This episode was super funny, and again, I love the balance of humor and a real situation here, especially with it pitting the different mentalities of the New York-born characters against Joe's Iowa, or I guess Southern, mentality. The side plot with Callan Jenkins and Old Man in the Building was also hilarious throughout the whole episode. Funnily enough, I also think the last episode, episode 13, is another great one. There's two main plots in this one. One of them is about PJ, who accidentally ends up sleeping with his future stepmom, and Cal, who accidentally misses a huge meeting at work, and because of this, goes to the most desperate lengths possible by showing up to his boss's mother's funeral to feign sympathy. Both plots are absolutely absurd, but it's that absurdity that makes them so good, coupled up with the funny performances from PJ and Cal's actors.
Why, dear God? Why take her and not me? Eat me.
There's plenty of other funny moments throughout the show though. There's Johnny, who has to take care of a mob informant, letting him stay in the apartment, which completely freaks out Cal and Joe. There's Joe thinking that the new tenant next door murdered her husband and is completely convinced of it, but it turns out he was flipping out for no reason, until it's revealed she really did do it. I'd say the whole episode Aaron Go Barf is a fun one because most of it takes place in the bar and not in the apartment. Plus, it's fun seeing PJ continue stalling his live performance and Joe just being drunk as hell. And there's Cal, who is upset about Randy supposedly doing well at his office because he wanted to sabotage his bosses so badly, but it turns out Randy was actually awful, and in turn, that screwed over Cal, until Cal finds another opportunity to get back in the business game. I also wanted to shout out some of the great side characters in this show. There's Jenkins, played by the legendary Bill Irwin, who was mostly just embroiled in a petty feud with Cal. Cal would sometimes steal his laundry, and then he'd also regularly steal his newspaper, and they constantly tried getting one over the other in these instances. There was a one-episode appearance from John O'Hurley, who was great as Jay Peterman in Seinfeld, as well as the one doctor in that Drake and Josh episode. Officer Zajac is a hilarious cop who is just the laziest cop imaginable. He really hates doing his actual job of policing and just tries his hardest to not do as much as possible, and is always annoyed when the guys in the apartment come over for something, even if it's important. But my personal favorite side character has to be Zvi, who is played by Christopher Darga. When I first saw him appear in episode 3, I was completely taken aback. For those that may not know, Christopher Darga is the voice of Kenny Blankenship on MXC, as well as some of the other characters' voices. Specifically, he did a lot of the Baba Ganoush characters on MXC due to his Lebanese background. Not only did he appear in 2 episodes of Pigsty, but he was legit doing the Baba Ganoush character. He was doing the stereotypical humming and singing, the accent,
singing kind of a catchy little tune there. I don't know the words.
It's like a love song or something.
It could be.
and I just could not believe it. The original Baba Ganoush was on the sitcom Pigsty this whole time and later became a full-fledged legend on MXC. Speaking of other TV shows though, one other thing I did find funny in this show has to do with Tess and her acting aspirations. In episode 3, Tess is set to star in the newest episode of Star Trek Voyager. And what do you know, Star Trek Voyager was one of the shows debuting on UPN with its launch. Very clever cross-promoting, despite the fact that Tess, or her actual actress, Liz Vassy, was not in the actual show. One of her other roles takes place in episode 12, which is based around this new role for her. It's a role in a sitcom called Grown Up, which in-universe is a fairly popular and revered show.
So Tess, what's the part?
It's a guest starring role in a sitcom.
Which one?
Growing Up?
That's my favorite show. I've never seen it. What, do you live in a cave? Growing up?
And 4 years later, in 1999, UPN debuted a new sitcom called Grown Ups. Now that right there is some crazy time-traveling cross-promotion from UPN, a good job on them for that. And I cannot go without mentioning the fact that this show's intro song is really good. It's genuinely catchy as hell, and there was at least a day or two where it was definitely stuck in my head. It's just so funky and groovy, and it's just a real earworm.
Another fine morning, get on up. Another fine morning, coffee cup. Another fine day, said the DJ man. I'm out of the fridge, jumping into the pan.
Now, I've said a lot about Pigsty. I've gone over the characters in different episodes and plots I liked, but I really wanted to get to the big point here with this show. It only lasted for 13 episodes and was cancelled at that point. Do I think it deserved to be cancelled, or do I think it should have gone on for longer? I look back at the show and think about what some of the negatives of it could be. Yeah, there's stuff like Johnny and Randy and their attitudes towards Tess and other women that turned me off a bit. And there's other times where the humor in the show falls a little flat, but that's to be expected with a brand new show in only its first season. It takes time for shows like this to really find their groove. I also thought some of the acting in some spots wasn't the greatest, particularly from Joe and Johnny's actors. But to me, I think the biggest issue with this show is its premise. The premise of this show is just way too basic, and while in theory, leaving it very open-ended could lead to a variety of different things happening, it also can make it restrictive in ways. Okay, yeah, it's 5 guys living together in an apartment, and what else? There's no real catch there. There's not something that really brings all the characters together beyond just where they live, and there's no type of ongoing circumstance or big relationship unless you count Randy's obsessive crush on Tess. But to be honest, even with these negatives I pointed out, I honestly don't think this show should have been cancelled. There was still a lot of good stuff here. I don't know how the viewership for this show was at the time, so maybe that did play a factor into it, but UPN was also just starting, and I don't know. It just feels a little unfair to me that this got axed so early. 13 episodes is just not enough time for a sitcom like this to really find its groove. There was a lot of potential with this show, and I think if they could have continued on, furthered some more plots and character development, and maybe tinkered with a few things here and there, this could have been great. Pigsty was a funny show that did have its weak points as to be expected, but within these 13 episodes, there's plenty of real humor here that showed how much potential this show had. I'd consider this show to be almost a hidden gem of sorts, and I'd recommend if you're super into sitcoms and lost media to check the show out to see what it was like. If you've ever seen this show or want to see me discuss other obscure and lost shows, let me know down below. Also, let me know what else you'd like to see me talk about on this channel. Like the video, subscribe for more videos, and yeah, thanks for watching.